Hey, it's April, and today I'm working on something a little different as I received a parcel from Ace of Dolls. And inside is this absolutely gorgeous DEMI GOD ball jointed doll. Also, I need to point out how cute is this blanket cushion he came in. It's so soft and super pretty. So the version I have here is the Ambrosia faceplate, but Ace of Dolls also has the Nightshade faceplate for this body, which is a moodier style sculpt. And he's double jointed, so lots of posing options. He can also stand pretty solidly, which is always satisfying. Now, I knew straight away that I wanted a pale colour palette with lots of silver details, and since the sculpt is called DEMI GOD, I thought it would be fitting to add some armour, a wing, a sword, basically really push the fantasy vibes, but mixed with my usual clothing aesthetics. Also in the box is Ace of Dolls' business card with the cutest artwork, a COA with more adorable art. As you can see, I have the Occult Cream version, but he's also available in Cryptic Cocoa and Fantasy Fawn. Some extra hands, grasped and pointed, which is perfect since I want to give him a sword. There's also clasped and outstretched hands available with the pre-order for extra posing options. Now that everything's ready to go, let's get started on his face up. As always, I'm sketching the face first with pencil. I've actually started to really like how a pencil sketch on the face looks. I want to try and create a character that's just fully grayscale and sketchy at some point. I just need to work out how that's gonna work. And then tracing over the lines with acrylic so they're nice and bold. I'm trying to keep all the lines sharp and angled upwards so that even with the smile, he still has some fierceness to his expression. I really love the way Ace of Dolls sculpted his mouth. It's almost cat-like, it's really adorable. And then going in with the pastels. I'm wanting to add colour but keep the tones really soft to give him a ghostly fantasy feel. Plus I have an obsession with heavy eye bags, so they've got to be there. I find it really difficult to leave untouched resin, so I'm using a pale pink to add colour where the skin is naturally more flushed. And then layering the purple on top for shadows and to keep him more ethereal than human. To build up enough saturation that the colours stand out without losing that paleness, I found it really useful to apply the colour but then blend it out with white, especially with the purple as that can get really dark really fast. I'm using watercolour pencils to deepen the creases around his eyes. Shade the brows. And then blend, blend, blend. Since he has silver hair, he of course needs some grey lashes. I'm trying to achieve a neat but sketchy feel with the line art. I know that doesn't really make sense, but I was worried that if I made them too graphic and chunky, it would kill the softness of the blushing. For this style, I like to use a lighter paint and then darken it with the pastels. It's less aggressive and it blends into the face more naturally. And now I can sketch out his tattoos. I am a huge fan of cyber-sigillism and neo-tribal tattoos, and I think this style fits the fantasy vibe crazy well, so this felt like the perfect opportunity to include some. And I see him as a warrior, so you know, he needs some war paint, but just pretty shiny war paint in this case. I'm trying out the Vallejo metal paint for this one, and I have to say it's instantly claimed the #1 spot for metallic paints. It's absolutely gorgeous and it has great coverage without leaving the brush lines like a lot of metallic paints do. The only issue is it's made for airbrushing, so I had to be insanely careful using it for line art. It blobs and runs very easily. It's definitely worth the extra time for this finish though, it's so pretty. And that's his face up pretty much finished, but he still needs some eyes. So I took 2 blobs of clay and marked where the irises need to be, then made little dents with a Dremel. And painted with acrylics. I simply had no choice but to give him red eyes. Honestly, nothing will ever beat a pale colour palette with red eyes for me, it's just the perfect combination. And having a non-human eye colour really helps sell the fantasy creature idea. Since the irises are really shallow, I didn't bother with the usual UV resin and just used a UV top coat instead. I don't know if it's just the resin I've been using, but this top coat genuinely seems much shinier anyway. Pop them in the head and his face is complete. But I can't leave the body without some blushing. Again, I'm sticking to really soft tones, just enough colour to highlight the details of the sculpt. It's a little difficult to see as my work lights are really bright, so it's washing it out, but you get the idea. I probably went a little bit too dark with the belly button to be honest, but there's black line art on the face, so hopefully it'll all balance out in the end. So I was sat trying to decide what shoes to give him. I usually make crazy shoes, but for some reason that scene from Constantine where Lucifer descends into view, feet dripping with black goo, popped into my head and I got completely fixated. It's such an awesomely dramatic entrance and that's how I imagine this guy would enter a battle, but dripping silver instead. Thinking about it, I may have actually played a game with a boss fight like that, I just can't quite place it. Probably Final Fantasy or something, I don't know. I also blushed his hands and gave him some purple knuckle bruises. And silver fingertips to match his feet. Now onto his outfit. I drew a pattern for a fitted crop vest, cut the pieces from stretchy white fabric, sewed together, and placed on the body so I can distress it, whilst making sure it sits right. The idea was that it's been shredded in battle, but let's be honest. With a chest this beefy, it's completely plausible that his shirts would just spontaneously burst open. For the jeans, I basically took the pattern from my Envy doll and sized it up, cut the pieces from some bleached denim, then sewed the darts at the top, but left the rest open. I glued a white overlay onto one leg, and then started cutting up the other. Use tweezers to pull and fray the edges so they look really worn and damaged. And then used a grater to rough up the surface. I then took a piece of blue cotton and started covering it with paint. I'm so used to small dolls, I automatically went in with a tiny brush, which made no sense. So instead, I grabbed the silver paint, poured it on, and just smeared it about with a big brush, and it worked so much better. I then emptied some white paint on top. You may have noticed the little bowl fell out, which actually made a really cool pattern. It was super useful. Once the paint dried, I then glued that to the back of the shredded jean leg, so that you can see the paint peeking through the rips. And then added more paint on top. Then sewed everything together. I glued on a pattern I cut from some white suede in a similar style to his face tattoos, and then cut up the white overlay. I've been really enjoying playing with different textures like this recently. It's such a fun way to include more visual interest in an outfit. This leg's still looking too neat though, so I shredded the bottom, brushed on more silver paint, and then threw loads of white paint on top. Once everything dried, I attached a waistband and a snap closure in the back, and then placed on the doll to add the final touches. First, I attached a chain to the waist, and then tied a piece of the white suede fabric on, and distressed it and layered it so it's a bit bulkier. The white is looking a bit plain at the moment, but that's because there's going to be silver armour here later on. And that's the jeans finished, and I absolutely love them. I'm forever wanting my doll's clothes, it's really annoying. Now let's make him a wig. I took some silver brushed yarn wefts and glued them directly to the wig cap. I'm gonna be honest, I straight up stole Kaoru's hairstyle from Evangelion. Once I'd drawn the red eyes and I knew I wanted the silver hair, I couldn't picture anything else, so it had to be done. Plus, I love making spiky hairstyles, so it works. To fill in the top section, I used some rolled up wefts. It's just so much easier to spike them that way, and they're obviously a lot thicker than flat wefts. I then cut and styled with warm water with a little bit of glue mixed in. And used my iron tool to set the spikes in shape and also to give them some movement as well. This was definitely one of those tasks that made time just seem to disappear, but it was so worth it because I'm really, really happy with the result. I haven't actually done a spiky hairstyle on this scale before, it's always been smaller dolls, and I think it works a lot better. There's more room for more spikes and the sizing just matches better. It looks a lot more convincing overall. Now that everything's finished, let's check out how he's looking so far. I'll be back on Saturday with part 2, where you can see my demigod take his final form. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.